Hey everyone, welcome to my channel where we dig into the juiciest Reddit stories of betrayal, gossip, and scandals. Subscribe for more drama-filled tales, and let's dive right in. My daughter cut me from her wedding I paid for, so I canceled everything behind her back and watched it unravel. No one can hurt you quite like your own children. It's a truth I'm living through right now. My own daughter, Ava, 27, completely blocked me from her wedding, and I've been drowning in sorrow ever since. I've been drinking and feeling devastated for a week. Yesterday was supposed to be her big day, the wedding I paid for as a gift to her. Ava wasn't the easiest child to raise. We had more than our share of struggles. So when she finally told me she was getting married, I was genuinely happy. She had found someone she loved and wanted to settle down. Unfortunately, she and her fiancé were struggling financially, so I stepped in and covered the costs of the wedding. I thought this would bring us closer, but instead, I was completely shut out. It's hard to explain how deeply it cuts. A few days ago, I called the wedding planner to add my brother to the guest list. The planner told me the guest list was full. I asked for the full list to see if we could make room, but he said Ava had explicitly told him not to share it. I reminded him that I was her father, and I was paying for the whole wedding, so he had better show me. After some reluctance and a threat to contact his boss, he finally sent me the list. When I saw it, my heart shattered. Neither my name nor my wife's was on it. I thought it had to be some kind of mistake, so I called the planner again. He explained that Ava had specifically asked him not to include us. I was in complete disbelief until he forwarded me the email exchange between them, confirming it was true. To make matters worse, Ava had even instructed the planner to block us from entering the venue. Can you imagine how painful that was to discover? I always knew there was tension between us, but I never imagined it was this bad, that she would go so far as to keep us from her wedding day. I called her in a fit of anger, but she didn't pick up. It was the day of her bachelorette party, and she let my call go to voicemail. I left her a message asking her to call me back, but she didn't call that day or the next. Finally, on the day before the wedding, I showed up at her apartment. She was living with her fiancé at the time and told me she couldn't meet because she was swamped with wedding preparations. By that point, the wedding planner had already informed her that I knew about the guest list, which explained why she was avoiding me. I went over to confront her and get an answer, but her attitude only fueled my anger. I told her I knew she had deliberately blocked me from attending the wedding. Her response? Well, good for you. It saved you the time and effort of traveling to the venue. I'll send you the photos if I get a chance. I completely lost it. No explanation, no remorse, no apology, just that. I broke down under the weight of her cruelty. My anger turned to tears as I asked what I had done to deserve this treatment. She accused me of always being the first to wrong her, by throwing a stepmother in her face, and by siding with others instead of her. She wanted me to defend her unconditionally, even when she was clearly in the wrong. How could I, though, when she had bullied my niece? I protected her when she got caught with pills at school, saving her from expulsion. She only got into college because of my help. Yet, despite everything I had done for her, she chose to be ungrateful. When she saw me crying, she accused me of spreading negativity in her home. I reminded her that I was the one paying for her wedding. Her response turned even more offensive. She claimed I wasn't doing her any favors and that I owed this to her. That's when I snapped. I told her I owed her nothing. I had done more than enough, and funding her wedding was in fact a favor. She asked me to leave, saying she didn't have time for my emotional drama. I went home and broke down in tears in front of my wife, Mercy, who is also Ava's stepmom. Mercy is usually compassionate and forgiving, but seeing me like this made her angrier than I'd ever seen before. She pushed me to take a stand against Ava, insisting we couldn't let her keep acting entitled and hurting us. For the longest time, Ava had relied on my financial support until she finally got a decent job about a year ago. That's why she had no savings for her wedding. I had reached my limit. I decided it was time for her to face the consequences. I canceled every wedding arrangement. Even though I barely recovered any money from the deposits, I didn't care. I called off the venue booking and thought about canceling the wedding planner too, but I didn't want to tip Ava off and give her time to rearrange things. My goal was to ruin her special day. She already had her dress, so I let her keep that. As I was doing all of this, guilt crept in. But when I reflected on everything I had done for her, I reminded myself I had already gone above and beyond. If Ava didn't feel any remorse for excluding me from her wedding, Why should I feel guilty? When the day of the wedding arrived, chaos broke out. The planner, decorators, and caterers showed up, but they were denied entry as the security staff had received the cancellation notice. The wedding planner called me for the final payment, but I told them it was no longer my problem. They needed to sort it out with Ava. They mentioned Ava got into a heated argument with the security when they blocked her entrance, and she nearly got arrested for trespassing, but her fiancé stepped in just in time. Ava tried to call me, but I had already blocked her number. She even showed up at my house, but I had removed her gate access. I wasn't afraid of her, I just wanted peace. There was no point in talking. It would only lead to more hurtful words, just like the last time I visited her. It was about time she dealt with the consequences of her actions. She wasn't a child anymore, and forgiveness had its limits. Ava didn't want family at her wedding, only her friends, so luckily I didn't have to explain anything to our relatives. She had to handle the fallout with her own circle. The only people who were truly upset with my actions were my parents. They believed no matter how awful children behave, we should never be too harsh on them. But I told them Ava had brought this on herself. She had been selfish and cruel for years. Still, no matter how much I try to justify what I did, the guilt lingers. I might put on a brave face, but deep down, it hurts that I stopped my own daughter's wedding. I'm not sure why I'm writing this, but somehow putting it into words has lifted a burden from my heart. I thought people would call me an idiot for being so harsh towards my own daughter. Some of you asked about the reason for A's hatred towards us, so let me explain. My wife, Mercy, 45F, is my second wife, and AA is my daughter from my first marriage. AA's mother and I separated when she was 7 years old. Her mom met someone else and left me for him. When they moved to Europe, they didn't want AA, so I got full custody. I remarried Mercy when AA was 13, and ever since, AA has been hostile toward her. She despises Mercy, which I understood at the time. Seeing someone replace her mom must have been difficult. Mercy, a teacher and trained children's counselor, reassured me that AA would come around as she grew up. She believed that once AA became an adult, she'd see me not just as her father, but as someone who needed a partner. I remarried 5 years after my divorce, thinking AA would eventually appreciate how I parented her alone during those years. Her mother and stepdad wanted nothing to do with her. But sadly, AA didn't become more understanding. She became more hateful toward both of us. Things got so bad that I had to send her to live with my sister, hoping she'd get along with her cousin, who was the same age. That worked for a few months, but soon my sister had enough. AA and her cousin fought constantly, and with school finals approaching, my sister didn't want her daughter's grades to suffer. So AA came back to live with us, though she spent most school vacations at my parents' house. Eventually, she refused to come home altogether and stayed at my parents' house full-time, finishing high school from there. I arranged carpooling to make it work, as long as she was happy. But her high school results were awful. That's when I found out she had fallen in with the wrong crowd, kids who were taking pills. She also had a toxic boyfriend. No wonder she wanted to live with my parents. She could sneak out after they went to bed and roam the city until late at night. She had to repeat her final year of high school. Getting her through college was another nightmare. Luckily, I had some connections that helped her secure a spot at a decent college because, with her poor grades and bad attitude, she wouldn't have been accepted otherwise. In college, she fell into the wrong crowd again, got into drugs, and eventually had to be sent to rehab. She graduated at 25, but a year later, she relapsed, and I had to admit her to rehab again for a few months. It's not harsh to say she's been a real challenge. She's embarrassed me, caused endless stress, and made life difficult. Thank goodness for my wife, Mercy. Had she been anyone else, she might have convinced me to cut ties with AA, but instead, she encouraged me to be patient. I'm forever grateful to Mercy for all her support and sacrifices, both for AA and for me. AA's biggest problem seems to be my remarriage, especially to Mercy. Part of the issue might be that Mercy isn't Native American. Her family came from the Middle East. They were immigrants, and she grew up in an NGO because her parents couldn't afford to raise their 5 children. Mercy fled a war-torn region and came to the U.S. with nothing. This is what first drew me to her. Despite a difficult childhood and limited resources, she overcame her hardships, earned a master's degree, got a well-paying teaching job, and built her life from the ground up. She is a self-sufficient woman, but Ava calls her a gold digger. I run a successful export business that has been in my family for 2 generations. So yes, we have generational wealth. Ava believes that Mercy married me for the money, especially since this is Mercy's first marriage and my second. Ava's reasoning is, why would Mercy marry a single father who is 12 years older than her if not for the money? I'm 57, Mercy is 45. I'm not sure exactly where Ava got those thoughts, but that's her argument for calling Mercy a gold digger. Some of you have also asked if Ava's mother is involved in all of this. Truth be told, she hasn't been in contact with Ava or me since the divorce. The last I heard is that she lives in Germany, but that's all I know. Now for the current situation. After I canceled Ava's wedding, she tried to contact me to vent her anger, but I blocked her on all platforms. My parents were upset that I canceled the wedding and even offered to pay for it themselves if Ava wanted to reschedule. But Ava turned against them too, accusing them of siding with me. She even threw them out of her house, using harsh words and forbidding them to visit. She accused them of exposing her drug use in high school, even though it wasn't them, it was her teacher who went to the same gym as me. After that, my parents changed their stance and agreed that canceling the wedding was the right decision. I can't let Ava think it's okay to use and hurt us whenever she wants. I still have no contact with her and have no idea what she is up to. My parents visited her 2 days ago, which is 10 days after the wedding that was supposed to take place. They said she hasn't gotten married yet, so either she's planning a new date or she's just not going to do it. Oh, and I blocked her credit card, the one I was paying on. She hasn't used it much since she got the job, but she still had access. I know it will make her angry, but after seeing how she treated my parents, I don't feel guilty. They are in their 70s and have always loved and protected her. Ava should have been cut off. It's about to be over a year since my last update. I keep in touch with many of you who have commented or written to me. A few weeks after my last post, I found out that Ava married her fiancé in a private ceremony with only their close friends in attendance. I was happy for her and wished her well. I hadn't interacted with her on social media, so I didn't know what was going on in her life. My niece told me that Ava had moved with her husband to a neighboring town and had updated her Facebook status. Everything was fine until a week ago when I received a phone call from an unfamiliar number. It was Ava's husband, Matt. I was worried that something had happened to her, but he assured me she was fine. He said she wanted to meet me in person, which surprised me. I asked why, but he said he would explain when we met. He mentioned that he was in town and suggested dinner. I agreed, hoping that this might be a chance for Ava and I to reconcile. I thought that maybe she was too embarrassed to look me in the eye, and Matt was playing the role of mediator. With high hopes, I set off to meet him, but when I arrived, Matt was alone. I asked where Ava was and he said he didn't know. My heart sank. Then he told me that, they had separated, and Matt explained that Ava had been abusive during their marriage, struggling with severe anger issues. She would throw things and break household items even during minor arguments. Matt tolerated it for as long as he could, but eventually it became too much to handle, and they separated. He mentioned that Ava had psychological issues and often blamed others for any inconvenience. She frequently fought with him, especially after they had moved to a new city for his job. Although Ava had found a job with a similar pay there, she resented Matt for taking her away from her hometown. This was just one of many issues they faced. Matt said he wanted to meet in person to apologize. He admitted that he had witnessed Ava's cruelty towards me, Mercy, and my parents, but didn't intervene because Ava had manipulated him against all of us. He regretted ignoring the red flags and bringing misery upon himself. I told him that none of this was his fault. It was Ava's. To some degree, I blamed myself for not raising her properly. I also apologized to him for everything he had been through with Ava. Matt then asked me for a favor. He said Ava had been devastated by the separation and was pleading for him to take her back, but he had fallen out of love after enduring her abuse. Still, he wished her well and asked if I could support her during this difficult time. Ava had pushed away most of her friends due to her temper, and he hoped I could take her to therapy or offer some help. I told him I wished I could, but Ava wouldn't let me near her. He understood, and we both expressed our desire to help Ava if she would accept it. After that conversation, I decided to visit Ava. Sadly, as expected, it didn't go well. She lashed out at me and Mercy, even though I came alone to spare Mercy from Ava's wrath. I apologized to her, trying to calm her down. At that moment, I wasn't focused on right or wrong. I just wanted to help. I told her she could say whatever she wanted about me, but she needed to see a therapist first. Ava ignored me and brought up the past, yelling that she hated Mercy so much she wanted to kill her. She admitted to blocking us from her wedding because she was ashamed to introduce Mercy as her stepmom and embarrassed by our marriage. Despite my efforts to reason with her, she chased me out, blaming me for all her problems. I'm not sure if I did the right thing, but at this point, I just want her to get better. I don't know how to help her anymore. I was very upset when I made the last update, and this space has helped me calm down. Mercy suggested reaching out to Ava's childhood best friend. Her family lived next door, so we knew her well. She now lives in South Africa, so I contacted her through social media explaining the situation. I asked her to reach out to Ava, hoping she could get through to her, as she was the one person Ava had never fought with. Her friend promised to help, and thankfully, she did. Ava agreed to go to therapy, and I believe it's helping. About a week ago, she visited my parents and apologized for her behavior. She admitted that her hatred had grown so strong she could no longer control it. However, she also said she would never forgive me and still blames me for everything. I don't hold any resentment anymore. I just want her to have a good life, even if I'm not part of it. Thank you all again for your support. I hope no parent ever has to experience the kind of hatred I've faced from their own child. Thank you for watching. I am waiting for your assessment of this story in the comments, as well as ask you to put a like, put a bell, and subscribe to the channel. Till new exciting stories together. Block Story Life.